Man, that car is really used. Hi, welcome to Horsepower TV, where today it's Mopar Mania here in the shop. You know, I guess nothing symbolizes the Mopar muscle car era like a 70s Superbird. This one happens to have a 440 big block under its hood. Now, in its day, winged warriors like this one dominated the streets, the strips, and even the round racetracks of America.
Of course, when you're talking Mopar muscle, you can't leave out the awesome A-bodies like this 67 Barracuda. Now, this convertible is one of only about 4,200 built. It's got a 380 horse 360 under the hood, and like the Superbird, this CUDA was brought back to life by John Balo Muscle Car Restorations.
Recently, we got a 67 CUDA of our own as a horsepower project, and after today, it's also going to have a 360 turn in its tires. But wait, let's back up just a bit. Chuck and I started our A-body project with a Magnum 360 short block from Jegs, and then added a roller valve train from Comp Cams, Edelbrock Performer heads, and one of their air gap intakes, along with a 750 Demon carb. We buttoned up the bottom end with a Moroso oil pan. To make the 360 swap possible, we went to Stevens Performance in Alabama, where we found a used correct K-member and bolted it up to the CUDA's frame. Before dropping the new motor in, though, we had to take the one that was in here out. It was a 440 RB, okay for drag racing, but our goal was a much more balanced, drivable street machine that takes the curves as well as the straightaways.
I see you guys also had to remove those headers that were poking their way through the fender well and that master cylinder just to get the big block out of there. Now, the nice thing about this small block is once we get it in place, and there's going to be plenty of room under the hood to work, it's going to take about 150 pounds off the front end, and if we give it a little whiff of nitrous, it'll make as much horsepower as that big block ever did. But before we can bolt it in place, we've got to have the right mounts to mate it up with a K-member.
And I got them right here. These are factory-style brackets from Schumacher Creative Services, and they allow you to retain all your accessories, even AC if you got it. You racers will be glad to know they got a steel version of this for the driver's side. Of course, we're going with the rubber mounts since our A-body's destined for the street. Now, while we were at it, we ordered this urethane transmission mount and this adjustable torque strap kit. What do you think of this?
Hey, that's a pretty cool piece, all right. And it sure beats the old chain welded to the frame to help eliminate engine movement. Now, check this out. It's got a spherical rod end up here and threaded adjustment and urethane bushings on the other end. The best part, though, is that it bolts right up and there's no welding or fabrication required.
These brackets bolt right up to the lugs on the block using hardware from the kit. Now, when you install your mounts for both the transmission and the engine, make sure they're finger tight only at first. That's because the slots and holes in the K-member have built-in adjustability so you can position the engine for maximum clearance. Of course, after you do have the engine in place the way you like it, you can go ahead and torque all the boats to factory specs.
While Joe's getting that engine ready to install here, I'm going to go ahead and reinstall the master cylinder and get that job out of the way. Now, you might be wondering what we're going to do with this big hole where the headers used to go through the fender wells, and quite honestly, we're not going to do anything right now. But in a couple of weeks, we're going to show you how to bend some sheet metal and make a permanent repair there. But right now, let's get the engine in.
Yeah, but before we drop that engine in, we're going to lay our headers inside the engine compartment. Now, for our CUDA here, we chose these Equalink step headers from Tube Technology. Their design increases both bottom-end torque and high-end horsepower by starting with a 1 5/8 inch primary that feeds into a 1 3/4 inch secondary, and that dumps into a 3-inch collector.
We also specified this polished ceramic coating on the outside and a thermal barrier coating here on the inside of each one of the pipes. Now, here's another feature that I like. A leak-proof seal is virtually guaranteed by virtue of this 3/8 inch flange and these surface ground welds. Now, to help us install this header, the driver's side features a removable tube right here on the number 7 cylinder. And you position it between the torsion bar and the frame before it slips back together.
You know, I'm about as green as that Barracuda there when it comes to Mopars, but everything looks good so far.
Well, you know me. I'm Mr. Chevy, so I guess it'll be the blind leading the blind in the shop today. But you know what? Even a blind man can see that that hood needs to come off before we can go too much further. How you looking? You loose over there?
Yeah, come on, let's go.
All right. All right, we're looking good up here, Joe.
Gonna clear it?
Yeah, I think so. Oh yeah, we're looking real good. That's about it now. I think we're about ready to come down with it.
Not bad for a couple of Mopar morons, huh?
Well, you know what they say, ignorance is bliss.
Well, don't you do anything stupid like leave us. We've got more of this A-body engine swap right after this.
Welcome back to the shop and more of our A-body engine swap. Now, if you're just joining us, Joe and I have already dropped a 360 Magnum into our 67 Barracuda here, and we're leaving everything loosely bolted up until we can get the transmission in. That way we can position the engine to give us the clearance we need around the headers and other accessories before we cinch down all of our mounting bolts. Now obviously the next step is to bolt up our automatic behind the block. You know the TorqueFlite is Mopar's heavy-duty automatic transmission, and well, it's lived behind Hemi, so it shouldn't have any difficulty living behind our small block.
Especially with the modifications TCI's made on this one. It's a Street Fighter 727 with improvements like carbon clutches and steel clutch plates. Plus, it features a Kevlar band and bolt-in spreg for increased reliability. Now, the valve body on this thing's also been upgraded for increased line pressure and firmer shifts at higher RPMs. With all those modifications, this baby will handle at least 700 horsepower. Now, for a torque converter, we're going with their 10-inch Super Street Fighter with about a 3,500 stall. This is a race-ready piece with features like furnace brazed fins, Torrington bearings, and an anti-ballooning plate for reinforcement.
Of course, we need to install the converter before we can bolt the transmission up into the car. Now, here are a couple of tips that are going to help you do the job right. Pour a quart of transmission fluid into the converter to help keep things lubricated during initial startup. Now, we like to use this Royal Purple for protection under extreme pressures and high temperatures. You also want to make sure to put a little bit right here on the snout to help protect the seal when you install the converter in the trans. Rotate the converter while you push it in until the lugs engage the pump. There we go.
Man.
Hey, that's some pretty fancy footwork you got going on there, Joe.
Yeah, I got your footwork.
Before he gets that thing jacked up too high, though, I want to give you a little tip that's going to save you a headache later on. With the headers already in the car, we want to slide the starter up into position before we bolt up that transmission. Now, we went with this mini starter from PowerMaster. It's about half the weight and size of the original, which is going to give us plenty of room around the headers, and it's going to help keep this thing from frying. Now, it's a gear reduction starter, which means it's going to have more than enough torque to crank over the highest compression engine, and it's got a billet snout here for added strength and to help keep this starter drive properly located against that flywheel. There we go. Now we're ready to line the transmission on the dowel pins. How are we looking?
Pretty good. A little bit more there.
All right. Okay.
Well, now we can bolt the transmission to the back of the block. Then, using some Loctite, bolt the converter to the flex plate. And torque the bolts down to 30 foot-pounds. Finally, we install the cross member with the new trans mount.
Okay, now that we've got the engine and transmission loosely bolted into place, we can go ahead and check for all of our clearances, move things around if we need to, and then cinch everything down.
While Chuck finishes cinching down those bolts, I'll get started on the rest of our exhaust system. Now, it too came from Tube Technologies, and it's designed to mate right up to the collectors on those headers we installed. Now, we got ours with the 3-inch tubes that'll handle all the extra horsepower of any future upgrades we might make. Now, it's fully aluminized with mandrel bends for maximum flow, especially when they breathe through these massive Dynamax Super Turbos. Now, the kit comes with all the mounting hardware we need, including these original style hangers that mount right up in the stock locations. Replace the rear seat belt bolts with the ones supplied in the kit. Then install the hangers with the offset here pointing away from where the drive shaft will be. Next, install the tailpipe hangers to the frame using existing bolt holes. Next, the head pipes slip over the collector extensions. Then support the mufflers in the hangers before you slip them onto the head pipes. Now we can slip the tailpipes over the axle and into the mufflers. Finally, secure the tailpipe to the rear hanger.
Okay, after checking everything for clearance, the choice is yours. You can either clamp everything together or weld it. Of course, if you don't have your own welder, there's always the local muffler shop. Now, while we get our Barracuda down on the ground, don't you go anywhere, because when we come back, we're going to take care of the cooling, electrical, and ignition systems on our A-body.
Hi, and welcome back to more Mopar madness here in the Horsepower Shop. We're making some progress today. So far, our A-body's got a new 360 small block, TorqueFlite transmission, performance headers, and exhaust. Now time for more work on the top side.
And I know just the place to start. The wiring on this car is a major electrical meltdown, just waiting for its place to happen. It's been sliced, diced, and butt spliced to death, and who knows what wires go where. So we're going to replace this whole mess with this reproduction wiring harness that we got from year one. Check it out. It's got the right gauge wires, the proper connectors, and even the right color coding on them. After pulling out all the old wiring, we start by plugging the new junction blocks into the firewall, then snap the plastic retainers into place. Well, now we can start plugging into all of our accessories. Of course, if your wiring harness was as butchered as ours was, it's probably a pretty good idea to get yourself a factory manual and start studying those schematics.
We installed that Mallory Unilite distributor the day we built our 360 motor, and well, today we decided to fire that thing off with one of their Hi-Fire 6 multi-strike boxes. Now, it has digital circuitry, which means it'll be efficient without drawing a lot of power, and it has a built-in rev limiter that needs no chips. Plus, if we want to upgrade with a power adder later, this thing is easy to configure for boost retard, even multi-stages of nitrous. Now, first step is to find a good place to mount it. Let's see, right here on the fender well should be a good spot. It'll be far enough away from heat and give us plenty of access. Plus, the factory box was located right here, so we know wiring won't be a hassle. Now, once we get power to the box with this red and black wire, this yellow and black wire goes to the new coil. The red one, well, that goes to the old coil lead. Oh, in case you're wondering about all these wires, well, they're for those power upgrades we might make later on.
The final piece of our electrical puzzle is this alternator. Now, we got this one from PowerMaster, and it cranks out an amazing 140 amps. That's more than enough to run our high-powered electronic ignition, a big thumping stereo, and it'll probably have more than enough left over to run the lights for a small city. Oh, and here's something else I like. It uses a simple one-wire hookup. Now, when we got the Barracuda, it had a big block in it, so we had to get the right alternator mounts for a small block, and, well, we ordered these from year one. Right about now, you're probably asking yourself, hey, where's that battery? Well, when we got the Barracuda, it was already in the trunk. And since it'll help out the car's weight transfer and balance, we're just going to leave it there.
Here's something else that'll take weight off the front end. This aluminum radiator from Be Cool is a lot lighter than the copper brass original, and it transfers more heat thanks to an advanced fin design and a cross-flow configuration. Now, the fan shroud module contains a pair of 10.5-inch electric fans, automatically controlled thanks to a thermostatic switch. Now, Be Cool claims this configuration is good for 1,000 horsepower.
That's a bunch. Now, before we bolt up that radiator, let me show you what we're going to use to keep our transmission alive. Did you know that for every 20-degree drop in fluid temperature, your transmission will double its life? Well, we did. So we ordered the biggest cooler that TCI had. Of course, our loose converter and those passes up and down the drag strip are going to add some extra heat, so this is going to do the trick. It mounts real easily right to the front of the radiator using these straps that come in the kit.
Well, I'll flip this thing over and we get started.
Good job.
What do you think?
There we go. Well, now that we've got our fans and our cooler mounted up, we're ready to drop this thing in. The mounting brackets rest right here on the frame rail where we drill a 5/16 inch hole. With the radiator removed, enlarge the hole in the frame to 5/8 an inch, and then you can install the rubber grommet with the threaded insert. Now we can tighten the radiator to the frame. Then we'll drill a pair of holes right here through the upper radiator support into the core support. Finally, we installed these two upper bolts, and now we're ready to wire the fans.
Well, you Mopar fans will see more of this A-body project in coming weeks. Meanwhile, there's more show ahead, so stay with us.
Horsepower TV's Quick Tech is brought to you by Wyotech.
How would you like to make some door panels for your street machine that pop with personality and imagination? Well, listen up, class is in session.
We just took this door panel out of the car and we're gonna do a covering that's gonna be real simple and easy. We won't even have to use a sewing machine.
Wow, one that all of us could do just right at home, huh?
Correct.
I love it. How's this thing gonna look, Dan?
We're gonna start out with putting some flames up on top, doing what we call hard pleats in the center, and then doing some more flames along the bottom of the door panel.
Sounds pretty fancy. What do you start with?
We're gonna start with the hard pleats in the middle.
Dan is spraying down contact cement, which you can find at the local hardware store. Then he lays down rectangles cut out of 1/8-inch panel board, using a piece of scrap wood for a spacer. Time now to draw a design. Again, in this case, good old-fashioned flame licks. He's using 1/4-inch Landau foam that you can get at an upholstery shop, cutting the design out using a 45-degree angle with his razor blade.
We're gonna start by putting some Landau foam on the top and bottom. It's 1/8 inch thick. We'll put them on here for two reasons. This will cover up the holes where our clips come through so that we don't have the clips visible when we finish covering.
Nice and neat.
And it also gives us the same height as the pleats, so we get a fairly consistent panel.
Remember, with contact cement, you need to spray both surfaces, the foam and the panel. Plus, let them tack a few minutes before you lay them together. Then you can trim around the edge of the panel. Now put down the flames. Of course, once you put pressure on them, they're there to stay. Hey, this is nice material you got to cover it with, Dan. What is this?
We got Black Alante vinyl here. We were using it because it's very stretchable, and we can get in and out of our pleats here, as well as on the flame licks.
Dan covers the pleats first, working the material into the crevices slowly. Then he covers the flame sections before stapling the wrap allowance, as he calls it, to the back of the panel. Finally, he trims the excess to make it less bulky and easy to install. And anybody'd be proud to install this. That's great work.
Last thing we got to do is cut the holes for the window cranks and door handles, and it'll be ready to install.
You know, we should point out that you can use flames or just about any design the imagination comes up with. Even a Mustang, huh?
I'm not sure, Joe. That kind of looks like a three-legged dog to me.
Three-legged dog. What do you mean?
Horsepower TV's Hot Parts is brought to you by Jegs. One call gets it all, one click gets it quick.
Since we've been in kind of a Mopar mood today, how about a starter for your vintage Hemi? Kind of hard to find, huh? Well, not anymore. PowerMaster makes a gear reduction mini starter for those early Hemis made from 51 to 57. But don't let its diminutive size fool you. This thing cranks out more than enough power to spin a high compression engine or to give you clearance around those tight frames and headers. Now, the billet snout, well, it's not there just for good looks. It's there for added strength as well. The price? Well, it's not too strong, under 200 bucks.
Well, here's a hot part for your cooling system. It's a thermal clutch fan from Hayden that makes sure your fan runs at the right RPMs. In other words, it gives you more air when you're going slow, and at faster speeds, less noise and fuel consumption. And since it takes a load off your water pump's bearings, the pump should last longer as well. Comes in 3 designs: standard, heavy, and severe duty, with prices varying according to application.
Well, I guess we've done our duty for today, and we're out of time, but don't forget to check us out next week.
See you then.